All right, we're good. Hello, everybody. This is Gina Blackman-Taylor. I am calling this meeting of the Bond Oversight Committee on April 21st, 2026 to order at 11:36 a.m. Apologize for the slight delay to start. Let's do roll call. I am here. Chris G. Here. Thank you, Chris. Al Lopez.
Present.
Present virtually. Hello, Al. Sally Acord. I saw you. Yeah,
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Jessica Allen, I saw you.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
David Flatt.
Present.
Thank you. Margarita Gamboa Harris. Okay, absent. James Halsey is absent. Nikia Jackson Hale.
Present.
Hello. Walter Jones.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Stephen Silberkraus.
Present.
Thank you. Yvette Williams. Here. Thank you. And we are joined by Trustee President Stevens and still our liaison, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Stevens, yes, welcome. Of note is that our other David has resigned from the committee, so we are David Flippo, sorry, I lost his name for a second. So we are down that position as well, as he was the finance liaison. I have asked Chris to, I've asked Chris to step in for design, so we'll get to that part when we get to the liaison representatives. But we are going to be in need of someone that is willing to be the finance liaison. So if that is a position that interests you, please let me know. Sorry, did I have a question? Did I hear a beep? I heard a beep. I heard a ping. We'll get to that in a second. So we're going to get to 1.01, opening items. Let us go to the flag salute. Mr. Jones, would you mind leading us in the flag salute? Sure.
He was too young to know.
We are now,
That's the way we learned it in school, right? That's why we all paused.
yes, but it is all nicely written out here on our agenda, so we can take a look at it individually, should we choose, and see that there is in fact no comma. So we will now move to 1.02, the adoption of the agenda. As this is an action item, we can have discussion first, then we'll take public comment, and then I will entertain a motion. So do we have any discussion on this issue? Do we have any public, is that a raise? Do we have any public comment on this issue?
On the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Still moved?
I'm sorry, who was
That was
that? That was
Steven.
Steven.
Second.
We got a second from Mr. Flatt. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. That agenda is approved. We will move on to 2.01. This is another action item, approval of the minutes. I will entertain discussion for a moment if anyone wants to take a look. If you have not had a chance to already, we'll give a couple minutes.
I wanted to say something about the minutes from last meeting.
Yes, Ms. Helen.
So I sent an email to, I forget who I sent the email to, but I was having technical difficulties in attempting to log in online and wasn't able to log in until I think 30 minutes after the meeting had begun. But I just wanted to note that I had been present.
Okay, and you are actually still marked present on this, on the minutes. Do you want it noted?
Perfect.
Is that, okay. So you don't need to make a change to this?
No, I just wanted to make sure that that was in there correctly. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Ms. Allen. So, do we have any other discussion items for this one? No, the other one. There you go.
Red should be stop, blue should be go, but anyway.
I would make a motion that we adopt the minutes from Tuesday, March 17th without correction.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I will entertain
Second.
that motion, and for just a moment. Sorry, who was that second?
Second from Stevens.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take the one from Nakia then. I heard that voice first. However, I do need to take a quick break and see if there was public comment on this issue. There was not, so we have a motion on the floor from Chris, a second from Nakia. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Great, thank you. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So that is the minutes. Moving on to 2.02, this is where we can talk more fully about our chair and liaison representatives. So first we'll go through our list, and then I will let you know what our openings are. So Al, for construction.
Nothing to report on this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. David, on site selection and land use.
Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you, David. Yvette, for community relations.
Yvette Williams. I was in Portland for the last 2 weeks. My daughter had surgery, so I didn't get to follow up with our chief of communications, Kirsten. We did have an informal conversation, though, around identifying the contact person in communications that, according to our bylaws, I should be working with. So I will follow up with her to see if we can get that meeting scheduled so that we can get that resolved. I also had intended to attend 2 of the meetings regarding the master plan, and I could not, having to go to Portland, but I am attending 2 this week. And I know they have been very busy with a very busy schedule. And I did want to just ask, if you don't mind, Chief, are the minutes being attended? Have you gotten any feedback from our consultants as far as the attendance? Have we seen an improvement is basically what I'm asking.
Brandon McLaughlin, Chief Facilities for the record. Yeah, I was going to cover that in 2.04, but
Okay.
Absolutely. I want to say last Thursday up in Moapa, an article just came out this morning. I believe it was in the hundreds up there. Boulder City also had, I believe, over 80 in attendance out there a couple weeks ago. So word's getting out a lot better, and in particular, some of the hard-to-reach communities, we're seeing good turnout and growing, and so we're really excited about what the strategy has been.
Okay. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you,
If anyone
Yvette.
has any questions of me.
Well, if anyone has any questions of Yvette, but Chris, you also attended one. Do you want to talk about it now or wait until Brandon brings it up? Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then, well, right back to you, Chris, on design. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I misspoke. So with Rob Gurdenson's departure, we do not have a design liaison. When I put out that offer last month, I hadn't heard anything, so Chris has offered to step up in this role, at least for now. As we're talking about some of our board members overall, we are hoping to fulfill our bylaws with some of those categories that would be staff selections. Valerie was kind enough to send where our openings were, but it does seem as if an architect or a financial person would be 2 of the specialties that we would want to look at. That can be a further conversation. But for now, Chris and design, do you have anything for us today?
The only thing I have on this section is I need to go back and research, because in the 90s, after we did the bond rollover, legislatively, we had an interim committee, and design was a component of that. We recommended at that time that schools include daylighting in their automatic construction. And I don't know where, somebody was asking me where that exists. So I don't know if the district's ever adopted anything, or if you are aware of any regs. If not, I'll continue to try to research that part, just as a go-forward concept, because it came up at Chaparral last week with regard to the redesign of the new school and the lighting and so on and so forth on how to bring in the daylighting. So that was the only thing that I have comment-wise. Thank you.
Do you have any response to that, Mr. McLaughlin?
Brandon McLaughlin for the record. I'm not familiar with where those policies or regs may be in legislatively. We're happy to research that. I'd say best practice, and our director for design management would also back up. We know daylighting improves educational outcomes, and so that's part of our standard slate of designs currently.
And there were no regs. It was an interim committee recommendation that I don't recall if it was adopted legislatively or not. So I don't want to waste staff's time digging through that. I'll continue to look. But if you've incorporated that in your design now, I will feel comfortable saying that publicly, but I didn't feel comfortable saying that publicly at the time.
Thank you, Chris. That concludes 2.02. So we'll move on to 2.03, report by the Clark County Board of School Trustees Liaison, President Stevens.
I'm actually waiting on our CFO to give me some information that I really wanted to provide. I know that we have, the board approved a $600,000 bond, I believe it is, to go before the debt commission. Do I have it right? Is it 600?
600 million.
600 million, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry,
and that's
600
to
million.
the board for resolution approval so far. Oversight panel for school facilities meets May 11th regarding that.
Yes. So that'll be going to the debt commission. And then the other thing that I understand is that we recently sold some bonds and saved the district a few million, if I recall.
Yeah, as part of our ongoing process, we look at our old bonds that are existing. If we can get a better interest rate on those bonds, we will buy those bonds back the current rate to give us savings when we issue the new funds. So what you'll see, a refunding bond that goes to pay off owed debt, and at the time that we're doing that again, we have interest savings on what we're purchasing back.
Yeah, so one of the things that the team has done a phenomenal job at is paid very close attention to the market and understanding when the timing is everything. And so they've done a phenomenal job. They presented that to us at one of our most recent board meetings. And so the team's doing a really great job in being fiscally responsible with these bonds and the issuance of them. So just wanted to give you guys a kudos and let you guys know that's what we've been seeing, so.
Thank you. Yes, Chris?
Thank you, Trustee, Madam President. To Rodney, what is when you do the interest savings that come about, where are you required to apply them? Back, is there a special account or?
Anything related to Fund 315, we're going to use in our Fund 315.
In that fund? Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions for President Stevens? Hearing none, thank you, and thank you for the kudos. It is really nice to know when you're talking about this amount of dollars that there's such stewardship in terms of trying to get as many benefits as we can out of that. So that concludes 2.03. We'll move on to 2.04. Mr. McLaughlin.
Brandon McLaughlin for the record. I already gave a lot of my update with Chris's design update. No love lost, though. It's fine. The facility master plan stakeholder engagement and community forums continue. We are conducting 36, I believe, stakeholder advisory and community forums. We're about midway through them. And deliberately by design, about 50% of them the first half year have been more exploratory. Hey, here's the options, here's the data with community members. And the second stage will be more about here's the things we heard and here's what we're offering up based upon what we heard. So refinement of those options based upon what the initial wave of community feedback has been. So to answer and reiterate your question earlier, yes, we are having great attendance at these. I think I would task everyone in this room, we are all responsible to get our communities out there. I think if there's words being said that a certain community isn't making out to it, we have some of the greatest, I think, public outreach firms as a part of this team effort. And so they can only take the message so far. It's incumbent on me, it's incumbent upon people on the dais that we let our neighbors know. And if they have a vested interest or want to care about this, we can invite them to the community meetings that we are aware of. So we continue to enter into this next wave where really it's about refinement of those draft options, preliminary draft options we continue to talk about, and futures that don't yet exist for some of our school buildings, whether that be as public education buildings or some other community benefit. So a lot of those discussions have been healthy and actually been very collaborative around what some of those other uses of our buildings may want to become. So we're just grateful for the community members that have come out and spoken about this, and really it's been a good, though it's about the buildings, it really has been opening the doors and the eyes about things outside of the building and frankly within the building that have nothing to do with the building though. So we try to focus it, but very much it's been a good tool to maybe leverage things that just need to be said. And so we're grateful for those conversations, but also we're able to redirect some of those comments, clarifications to longstanding beliefs, thoughts around maybe what's true today. So I just wanted to give a simple update about the FMP, that they are being well attended, and we're grateful for this next wave of them to start on the 27th next week, what we're calling 2.2, the Share Back Tour.
So the 2.2 Share Back Tour hasn't begun yet.
Right, we have 3 or 4 more events. What's part of the 2.1 series of public engagement through this week, and then next Monday starts the 2.2, the second wave of engagement.
Okay. Was that was that a question online? Nakia, was that you? You had a question or comment or?
So I just had a comment. So I did go to the website earlier this week, and the QR code that was on the website was not working for people to be able to sign up for those sessions. So I did point that out to communications. So they did resolve that. So it should not be an issue now for people that are wanting to sign up to attend.
Thank you, Nakia. Yes, Ms. Williams.
Push button on and off. I need a tech up here to push my buttons. I have a question, and this is beyond, I'm always forward thinking, right? So we're capturing some really, I think, valuable information. You basically raised the point, Brandon, when you mentioned, they're speaking about things outside of the building, but important feedback that we're getting. Are we capturing that feedback in some way that will help to benefit us and our charge around things such as, are you hearing, I work a lot with kids, so I'm around a lot of the student population, and so they share information. And so the students that are attending probably are giving those kinds of feedback, because we've tried to be pretty clear with them on what the purpose of these meetings are for. But if they're raising things like outside of what this contract or this work is, which is the master plan, such as maybe they're talking about, let's just say, security. Their cameras and their security system doesn't work. It sucks. I mean, that's how they talk. I'm talking like they speak. So are we going to be able to get? Will the consultant be able to provide you with some of this kind of feedback information that would help better inform us in our work and in our projections of future work and budget and all of that, to be able to deal with some of these issues that maybe we weren't quite aware of?
Yeah, it's actually a very timely discussion. We don't know what the deliverable would look like quite yet, but just like probably many of you saw as a part of the strategic plan effort, as a district-wide strategic plan, there was a 40-page document that was widely published about here's what we've heard. So very much we're thinking about what that document may look like in this work, because I think, this would be a nice inflection point to really capitalize on what it is we heard in this first wave moving forward and what we're going to do about it. That way, if I'm a community member, it's not just my words empty on a hall or on a page that I left in some library somewhere. It's, no, here's what they said and here's what they're actually doing with it. And so before I conclude that, I will say there has been a lot of student participation. And frankly, no offense to all the adults in the room, the students stay focused better than the adults. So they don't say my security camera sucks. Resoundingly, they say, I love my artificial turf field. If I had like a tick box for every time I heard the things not to do with the building but enhances their student experience, that would be one that stands out, is we love purposeful outdoor spaces. So we're hoping to capture some of that within it, but some of the student groups have had fantastic responses to that column D of what else should we be considering. Hey, have you guys thought about improving the courtyard of my building? Leave the rest of it alone, but we just want somewhere to go outside of these 4 walls. That's the type of stuff we want to capture, and we'll try to produce that in the next couple of weeks.
Great, thank you. Important information.
Yes, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they got off to a slow start. Not that the company that we hired or you all hired, they've done a phenomenal job. And I have to say, very well informed, good presentation, excellent discussion. Rick was at our last one at SHAP, and it made me feel that if the public took time to engage, they would feel much more comfortable about what the district's doing. I'd heard criticisms, 2 people here, 3 people there, and then we heard Moapa, Shap, and a couple other ones. So I think it's mountingly starting to get into people's minds. I know I'm going to go to one in May, but in the real world, I don't want people to be afraid, and that you can't control the press, but the way the press was initially rolling out the workshops and the meetings was as if every school was going to be closed in Clark County, and how dare you waste money, and it just was not that's typical of some of the press in reality. So I'm glad to hear that there's actual documentation that we can show that people have been actually engaged and have made certain recommendations, and so forth. Some things we heard, I heard, and I have to remember that Fremont was supposed to have been a K-8, and someplace that changed, but I remember the public had wanted that, and I don't know where that disconnect came in, but that's just something to file that might come back up at some point to say why did they ignore what the public recommended at that time versus what was there. The facility is great, it's up the street for me, but I went to the meetings and the parents were very, very adamant about what they wanted, but mostly it was don't move our kids out of here. So that was just part one. Part two, it came up at SHAP last week. Has the district actually returned all students back to their neighborhood schools through zoning? In other words, because it's going to come up with the west side, and I talked briefly to Senator Neal at the time. You don't want to lose the recommendations and the neighborhood feel that was recommended from the original DSEG, for example. And that conversation came up in our small group is, have we now, at least could we comfortably say, all kids within their school zone, that's where their neighborhood is, and that's where they would normally be assigned, rather than them being assigned to a school where they're already bused to. And so I don't know the answer to that, but that's another thing to maybe think about with staff, because that may come back up at some point in time as well.
Hogard is an example.
Hogard's an example.
Because they come to my neighborhood, they're bused to my neighborhood miles away.
Yeah.
So,
And
going to your point.
if we're going to do something as a district, that should be a number one goal, is to return those kids to their neighborhood schools before you look at where they're being bused to, I guess is really what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can follow up on a lot of that. I will say, as a result of some of the public comment we heard in March, we did begin to explore some of that. And yeah, there's a very, very low that are still opting to attend their out of neighborhood zone areas, but that's something, yeah, the facility master plan may start to peek into. And yeah, many of them are choosing to stay within their more neighborhood schools at this point. So if that's culturally what's going on, maybe we just have a recommendation.
Then maybe we acknowledge that if
Right.
that's the case. But truly, the recommendation had been done as we phased out of the DSEG was all kids should really be zoned for their school in their neighborhood. And then you work on where your population is causing the need for additional overcrowdings and so on and so forth, without the busing component if you've returned them at least to their neighborhood school. And so that was the conversation that I think we'd want to make sure that we were promoting. At least that came up in our, resoundingly in the group I was working with. Thank you.
Yes, Yvette.
Just piggybacking off of Chris's comments, I think just going back to what the community has always said they wanted, particularly on the west side, is they want high-performing schools. And so if the whole purpose of the master plan, I guess is what I'm saying, to wrap this up in a nice little bow, if that's the plan, is to create a destination for students at their school, then each school should be a destination school, then they shouldn't need to be bused. And so going to what you're saying. And so I think with good planning and we'd be able to do that and provide them with a fantastic school so they don't have to go to a gray elementary from the west side, because they have that kind of program in their neighborhood, at their neighborhood school. So that was it. I just wanted to kind of tie that together.
Thank you. Do we have any other further comment from online or in person? I I will say I appreciate these conversations. I've long been a big proponent of a town hall sort of conversation. I find that in general, when people are able to get their questions answered, if they feel a bigger trust in the process versus the public comment that happens in a meeting that we are required to sort of be neutral about. So to be able to have a feedback and a conversation where then people are able to see their comments and suggestions being incorporated into future decision-making is a really positive thing. I also appreciate your nod to talking about the, I know from the school's point of view, the idea of being siloed in terms of, hey, this is our conversation about construction and facility master plan, and it's not necessarily about some of these other things, but knowing that the public will take advantage of any opportunity to sort of interact with people from CCSD. I'm really glad that the trustees have continued their sort of dream reach outs and the way that these incorporate, so the way in which any of these outreaches to the community continue to try and share whatever information you get that is pertinent to other departments. If they get information that becomes pertinent to facilities, that there continues to be hopefully information sharing on the back end, because the public doesn't necessarily make those same kind of distinctions that are in the departments. And my only other question when it comes to this is, I know one thing that we tried to do in the past was really engage the SOTs as a method of reaching out to some of the most engaged parent communities and teacher communities at each of these schools. I don't know if the outreach plan has involved a deliberate outreach through the SOT channels. I don't know if that's a question that you can answer, but if not, I would hope that we do incorporate using those channels to sort of reach out in that way. Do you know if they've reached out deliberately to SOTs?
Brandon McLaughlin, we have not utilized the SOT pathway, though I will say a vast majority of our stakeholder advisories, as well as our community forums, are intended by SOT members. And why that is the SOTs have a clear and distinct route, and we want to make sure that they stay focused on what their route is, and that's operational management in partnership with the school principal. And so I think infusing things like facilities into it, though it's germane to it, I think merely just derails that conversation between parents and the principal. But again, all of those members are free to attend the community forums, and a vast majority of them are on stakeholder advisory groups. So I'm certain that voice is coming through loud and clear.
Yeah, and it's not so much, it's more of having sat on a SOT for several years, having also been a part of the PTA, including leading that, those are the groups that involve those stakeholders and are often a communication conduit. So I have just found that in our experience in reaching out, the closer you can get to the population you want to respond, and those are the people that reach out to their community and say, hey, make sure you're doing this. I think it's more of a communication strategy and how we outreach to those schools beyond just Facebook or emails or one of those other things. If we have a communication strategy that includes reaching out to SOTs and or PTAs/PTOs, that is another method of just getting the word out about the existence of these meetings more than just what's on Facebook or what comes from the district themselves. Any other comments on 2.04? Do you have any other topic under that, Mr. McLaughlin? All right, we shall move on to 2.05. Take it away, Mr. Fouts.
Rodney Fouts for the record. There's not much to report this month of February. As I've stated, our last issuance took place in March, which we'll be reporting next month. Essentially, we're at $4.4 billion in resources. We have expense to date just under 4.2 billion, with $303 million, which is encumbered. If you take those two numbers together, that comes to just under $4.5 billion. So our current cash flow is $232 million. However, again, as I state, when you take in those encumbered funds, we would actually be in the negative with about $71 million. Again, because the funds are encumbered, that doesn't mean that we spent those funds. It just shows that we have that obligation for the future.
Yes, Chris?
Rodney, when do you unencumber? How long do you keep that encumbered number on a facility, like say you finished Doris Hancock? When do you then close that out and start your new clean?
Well, essentially, on a construction contract, we're going to encumber the full amount of that contract. So once we pay that final pay up, that amount should have already been expensed, the majority of it, and been unencumbered as we go along and make those payments.
Okay.
However, the last piece of that wouldn't occur until we actually close that payment out. And if obviously, if we can get some kind of surprise where we have some savings in the contract or whatever, we will then realize those savings back to the fund as well.
Okay, so you can reallocate once you've done that
Correct.
unencumbered component. And that's there in case when you do your final, you've done a walkthrough and then you went, oh, they didn't have sinks on the second floor at the high school on, yeah, anyway. And then you can use that encumbered amount to fix that problem.
Well, actually, it should already be encumbered for the problems that exist because we have to do a punch list.
Okay.
And that punch list is to go out and say, please take care of these items that we found that needs to be taken care of. Essentially, when they have completed all those tasks and everybody's satisfied with the work they have, then that's when we're going to sign off on the final pay up and make the final payment.
And the principals weigh in on the punch list too, if I recall correctly? And
Brandon
then if it
McLaughlin.
was a design flaw, then you notify staff internally that they screwed up as the architects and didn't have sinks for the janitor to be able to do whatever they do, or something along those lines. Is that correct?
Yeah, our principals contribute to that punch list, but rightfully so, that actually resides with the architect and engineer. But we seek that input from the principal, for sure.
Because sometimes they know programming-wise what triggers things versus what an architect or engineer might even be looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other?
Yes.
Yes.
Walter
Mr. Jones?
How long do we hold retention?
Essentially, we keep the retention until we get to the last pay up. Then we release the last bit of retention and take care of those at the same time.
So do we hold it for, say for instance, on the punch list,
We will get the retention from the beginning of the contract based upon what the contract value is.
and then set it aside?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Do I have any comments from or questions from online? All right. I have no questions on this document in particular. And if you want, I can put it under a future agenda item, but I was hoping that maybe we could get that more expanded school by school capital summary report for next meeting. It's been a while, so it'll be nice to overlook that school by school document again. All right. That concludes 2.05. We can move on to 2.06. This is Regulation 7112 review. This is for possible action. So I know there's a lot of numbers. Even when I was trying to describe all this to everyone, it can get lost in the numbers. But Brandon, would you like to give a summary of how we've gotten to this point so far, or would you like me to start that off?
Madam Chair, you can start.
I shouldn't have made that an either or. I should have just gone to you. I'll learn my lesson for the future. So as we are reviewing our regulations and policies that affect Bond Oversight Committee, several years back, Regulation 7112 came to our attention. I believe this was even back when Mr. Goins was our chair, so this is going back quite some time through different chairs and through different facility heads. At the time, Ms. Williams and I were a part of a group that worked to get some of this language changed. Then this may have been, was it last year or 2 years ago that we brought this up? You brought this up initially to the Bond Oversight Committee to review. Now this is going into the final review process where it can then move into where it becomes recommended to the Board of School Trustees. Right, and so our action item today is to make a recommendation as to going along that process. I just want to make sure that I understand what we're asking this Bond Committee to do.
Yes, I'll try to synthesize a little bit of that of what I need to cover with this. So, district regulation and policies are put forward in line with the governance policies of how those are brought forward. It's basically a compact between the superintendent and her staff and the board. So you guys are a recommending body to the Board of School Trustees in that regard. And so, yes, we started down this path 2022, some workshopping. We brought this forward for discussion, and it actually dates back to June of 2024. Where very much alignment with most of the markings you see here are reflective of some of the feedback we heard from both the workshopping this group did, as well as ahead of that. So really today, this has been workshopped with you guys in June of 2024. Our executive leadership team of the district has reviewed and approved these recommendations. And so with your guys's nod to this today, we will then include that recommendation as a part of what we recommend on behalf of district staff to the board at a forthcoming school board of trustees meeting. The process for this is it gets read as a notice of intent at one meeting. No less than 30 days after that, it goes for final action, which is on a consent agenda item. So tentatively, I believe the second meeting in May, we anticipate this being a notice of intent where I will read very consistent with what I share with you here today, and then barring any crazy action not taken on the item, and that's absolutely a possibility, but barring approval there, we would then solicit this the tail end of June, if not the July meeting for final action as a consent agenda item. So as we get into the regulation, none of this should really be a surprise. A lot of it is just cleaning up common practices we already do and are already prioritizing workarounds. So it's really just making our current practices in alignment with the regulations. So item 1, simply clarifying the district's capital master plan and really distinguishing the CIP separate and apart from the capital or the facility master plan. They're two different mechanisms of how we track work. The second paragraph down, we include the age of the facility as a decision point, whether to renovate or replace. We roll down to Roman numeral number 2, item A. The facilities division hasn't existed since, I don't know, I think 2019, 2018, I think, last. So updating the title of the unit. Then adding, I know we've commonly spoken about we conduct facility assessments on 20% of our inventory every year. That way, over 5 years' time, all of our facilities are assessed. And so that's just codifying a lot of that practice that we're already doing given current staffing allocation. If we turn to page 2, it really speaks again to the 50-year lifespan we anticipate our buildings to have. So we don't want to necessarily replace our buildings if they're not 50 years or older because we didn't get the useful life out of them. If they're less than 50 years old and close to that 0.6, well, that means they're potentially a great candidate for renovation or extensive repairs. We also then in item 2 here on page 2 of 4, we talk about the program analysis shall consider facility age, percent of students enrolled versus program capacity, and whether portable classrooms are required to accommodate the current educational specifications. So it's kind of adding that anecdotal or qualitative side to how it is we prioritize capital dollars. More often than not, we hear, how can you replace this when you've got this other thing over here with all these portables, right? And so it speaks exactly to that. How do we get seats in brick and mortar spaces ahead of maybe other priorities? We then go to page 3. This is item C, number 1, item A, and you'll see this twice actually. The weight of critical systems that have the potential to interrupt instruction are prioritized and weighed heavier because we don't want to interrupt that daily instruction. So it gives a greater weight to vital systems such as the HVAC system, the roofing system, plumbing systems, electrical systems, and exterior envelopes. So those are our high priority areas where if one of those 4 things are the issue, they weigh into the priority a bit differently. Again, you see the anecdotal area in item C1D, speaking to the amount of portable classrooms, percentage of students enrolled versus program capacity, how it utilizes the building as well as the facility age. Item E, we also gave the nod to many of our students don't have the luxury of having their parents be their primary caretakers, so acknowledging guardians within it was an important acknowledgement from some of our school personnel. Last but not least, item, I believe this was E, on page 4. It's a continuation, but the region superintendent's input. They may bring items forward to the Bond Oversight Committee and School Board of Trustees, and oftentimes already, they're just working directly with me as region leaders, with our facilities team about any public community input or exemptions that they're seeking. So we're just codifying what that current process is as well. So I'll stop there for any questions, but yes, we are seeking recommendation to present this to the Board of School Trustees at their next scheduled meeting.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Chris?
Thank you, very helpful, because I wasn't around on in 24. So on page, or on section, section 2A, the facilities over 40 years of age, can you give me an example how that works? How do you get to 20%? Do you look at all the buildings on a campus? Do you look at some of the buildings on the campus? Some may be older than others. How does that 20% work?
No, that's a good question. It's 20% of our active sites. So we have 442 sites, I believe. So we'll go to 20% of those throughout the year, and we assess the entirety of that facility. But we only do that every 5 years.
Okay, so it's the total site, or the site in toto.
Right.
Is considered, because sometimes you can have older buildings and younger buildings on the same site.
Yep.
That doesn't figure in yet on this component.
It does, and it speaks to, I believe, the area that's in item C, but that's already a pre-existing process. And the example on the page 4 there is Boulder City High School, where you've got, or Western High School, sorry, being corrected here. But yeah, the FCIs are vary across all those buildings, and I'd venture to guess many of those FCIs are actually out of date because it's just an example purpose. But
Yeah.
it's to illustrate exactly that. You've got 0.5, you've got 0.05, and that's the items that then get presented to the BOC here when you have those sorts of inconsistencies.
Okay. And then all facilities over 40 years old, I think Wendell Williams and I added that language to my bond rollover back in the day so that we were looking at older facilities and not just keeping up with growth where they got the newer facilities at the expense of the older areas. So that's still there. Can you give us an example of historical significance? My only understanding is Good Springs is the only one with any kind of a historical designation, but maybe Boulder City is. I don't know. Do we have a list of anybody that fits that sentence?
To my knowledge, there's only 2 campuses that have historical designations. So it's Good Springs as well as 2 or 3 buildings rather on Las Vegas Academy's campus.
Oh, the old academy, or
So yeah,
the new slash old.
the main hall, the existing library, and Fraser are all on either national or state designation
Okay, and
lists.
so the remodel, or the replacement portion of LVA, for example, that's happening right now, you do keep the historical significance of the front of the building and the Art Deco and all that part of it, right?
Brandon McLaughlin, yes. We have actually given multiple presentations to the Las Vegas Historical Preservation Society and continue to meet with Bob Stoldahl
Okay.
and Senator Bryant. Because yes, we are now entering phase 2B design, which is the historic renovation of Main, Fraser, and the library. So that's right at the forefront of where we're at.
Okay, good. Second portion is, question on page 2, sub 2, program analysis. The way it reads, it's as if every campus has portables. I'm going to suggest there and in CD to add the term "if any," because it just, if you're looking longer term for some of this, you might want to, because some people reading it will assume, oh, every school has portables, and that's not necessarily true. Just for thought. And then in C1A, do we consider solar under electricity? Is that considered a component?
I mean, yes, solar generates electricity. I
Okay.
don't want to underestimate that. But the statement of this was more intended for what has the potential to close a school. And so in my mind, solar, if a solar panel's out, that doesn't threaten.
That's not going to affect the
Yeah.
operation. Okay, I see
Right.
what you're at. And then, let's see. And then in C, annual operating costs, by changing from will to may, then what happens?
What do you mean?
Well, it says expresses the cost per square foot and will be used to adjust priority. If you adopt this change, may be used to adjust the priority. And if it, what happens if it isn't used to adjust the priority?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand why you're going from strict to unstrict and then what the impact of that is.
I think this is, and I'd have to go back on when this recommendation was brought forward, which group of ours brought it forward. I want to say this has been here for quite a while. And more often than not, I'd say this enters the conversation, but it doesn't necessarily drive the prioritization. A lot of these other pieces will. And so instead of violating one of our regulations, it's just one component
Gotcha.
of many.
It just gives you a little more flexibility in
Right.
the long run. Okay, that makes sense. And I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, just to capture what it is your recommendation was. So on that, this examination shall consider statement, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, and portable classrooms, comma, if any, comma, required.
And the same thing in CD, if
Yep.
you adopt that language.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Madam. Couple of things. First off, I want to just say, express my excitement about seeing the portable classrooms specifically identified in this policy. So thank you for that. In section 1, overall, I guess what I'm missing here, or would like to maybe I'm just oversensitive, and maybe I shouldn't be concerned. But as you know, many of our schools are very different than each other and have facilities. I know we travel, the work that we do with the district, with our outside organization, we do a lot of events, as you know. That's our purpose, is to travel from school to school as part of that leadership role. And so the kids actually see all the different schools and how theirs looks different than those. And many have expressed, oh, I want to go to this school. This is a nice school. My school doesn't have. But I don't see that addressed here in this opening kind of statement here around that at all. I know we have, of course, our priority is to make sure that kids are educated in a safe place and have the necessary needs they have to learn. But how are we going to address an issue of some schools, especially when they're older, versus those newer schools that have more options, more access to opportunities that maybe some of the other kids may not have at their school because of the age of that building structure. So I guess I'm talking about comparing a school to another. How does that weigh in at all? And does it, and should it, being able to provide, for example, I remember, I don't want to call out schools because I don't, it's not necessary, but I remember one school we went to, and the kids noticed that they had lounge areas for their students to go with the big pillows and kind of a sit-in, more like around mental health. They wanted to have something like that at their school. They didn't have the space for it or to do something like that. So just using that as an example.
So for clarification, before you jump there, are you talking more programming that goes on to a school versus a facility
No,
component?
we're talking about a
Okay.
facility component.
I think
They can't offer those kinds of opportunities or access to those kind of opportunities because their building won't allow for that. So it's a space issue, but, and so I'm just wondering, how are we going to address that? Especially if we want to create all these schools of destination, or my school of choice is my neighborhood school, if we're not looking at those kind of things as well.
I'll say, if I can brand it, it's Keeping Up with the Joneses, Walter excluded. But that's the thing we very often hear. I will point to where we customarily rely upon for that is item 2B, 2, where it talks about program analysis. And so where, when
Okay,
we
I'm
do
lost.
facility improvements, there's two, call them trains. There's condition-based improvements and there's adequacy-based improvements. Condition is the condition of these systems and components need to be replaced. The adequacy means we don't have all the bells and whistles of a common, say, more modern prototype. And so right now, a lot of our emphasis has continued to be condition-based. We want all of our schools to just be at a baseline, but if we were afforded the luxury of either increased bond dollars or a breather where we don't have HVACs down, we would then probably transition to a lot more adequacy-based improvements. But there's a balance between the two. You can't just strictly say, oh, that school's running fine. It doesn't need all the bells and whistles. And so that's something we, as we prioritize dollars, need to be just conscientious of. Is this a improvement that's based upon adequacy or based upon conditions? And both can be in healthy relationship with one another.
I'd
But-
like to really see that kind of more, and maybe that's where we use that word may,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
But be able to at least address that in here, in our policy, because when we look at the revisions of this policy, if you look at that, you see how long it's been since we've even addressed this policy. And so it might be nice to incorporate a sentence or something related to that, so that in those instances, then we can add that into the discussion and weigh that into our decision-making on what we're going to do at that school.
So, like I said, paragraph, or was it section 2B2, paragraph 2 within that,
2B2, where am I?
page 2, it's about 2/3 of the way down.
Yeah, where it says program analysis?
Yep, so then the second paragraph down, it says.
Oh, second paragraph, program adequacy.
Adequacy
Okay, I got
is
you, I got you.
measured as the cost to build or upgrade space, and all underlined to accommodate current curriculum standards. And it says curriculum, I don't love that word choice, so maybe in hindsight, that would have been better to change. But this is where we'd say in alignment with current educational specifications.
So can we change that maybe instead of curriculum to program standards?
This is your guys' recommendation, if that's what you'd like to see.
I mean, at least it gives us a little more freedom to, curriculum is more instructional, whereas program could include facilities.
For consistency of term, would you guys adopt saying educational specifications? Because we try to layer into that in other instances here as well.
Educational what?
Educational specifications, ed specs. That's a very common term used throughout the architectural and design planning industry.
As long
Well,
as
This might actually, I mean, because one of the other ones that we're going to get to is that 7121. I'm wondering if that's where we really can look at maybe some of that
Yeah,
additional
yeah.
language.
I had a lot of questions
But-
on that one too, if we're just limiting it to outdoor space, because I have hot kitchens, for example, on that one.
But if I'm understanding, because I want to try and get to, whether or not we can feel comfortable making a recommendation,
Yeah.
because as you and I have talked about,
Yeah.
we've been in this one for quite some time.
Yeah.
So if the feeling that program analysis and program adequacy are not clear enough terms to sort of capture that or be a mechanism for kind of capturing that's your feeling, is that the language as it's written doesn't give a strong enough
Weight or consideration
to it.
yeah.
I'm going to point out. Language-wise, if you look above, you use the term current educational specs. So it makes sense to delete curriculum standards and insert that language if that's recommended. I'm not sure if you need the word current in either place, because that's kind of movable depending on the site, the principal, the SOT, what they offer as educational specs on a particular campus. So that's just food for thought. But if you're going to mirror that language, then I would say that use the ed specs versus the curriculum.
I will push back on that, though. There is a separate regulation that we'll get to eventually, I'm sure, regarding that the district shall adopt educational specifications to ensure a degree of predictability and continuity across campuses.
Okay, so
where
then
we-
you probably
I
want to
like
keep current. so-
Continuity, that's a good one. That's a
Current
good
ed
one, too.
specs then in
I
both
like that one
cases.
too,
Okay, thank you.
continuity. And then my other, so on that one, so we can go back to that one, but there were a couple of other that I just wanted to get to real quick, was B, Roman numeral 2, B2, program analysis, which we were talking about. Where you're adding the language, the program analysis may consider facility age, I'd like to see that change to analysis will consider facility age, percent of student enrolled versus program capacity, portable classrooms required to accommodate the current educational specifications. My other question for you on this, in particular when it comes to portable classrooms, how are we, in these considerations, are you giving it weight? Are each going to be weighted? And if so, is that going to be based on percentage of portables versus building classrooms? Or number? I mean, how are we determining that inadequacy?
It's what you guys recommend. If you guys want it to be a percentage based or weighted, what do we want to capture it as?
I'm just, you
'Cause
know,
right,
with
right
our
now,
history.
when we look at, say, just the Southwest High School area, for example, right? We know that Desert Oasis has double-digit portables. We know Sierra Vista has double-digit portables. That weighs into it. We kind of anecdotally and quantitatively know that there's a lot of portables there. So
Yes.
it weighs into it. It doesn't have increased weight, though it speaks to the story of why that schools are overcrowded, but seeing relief in the coming years. So I don't know, to Ms. Giuliani's question earlier, will versus may, I think it allows some flexibility, would be my only emphasis on here.
Yeah, I like will.
Okay.
And you're using.
Because it's,
You're
it
using
says
will
that
in
this view.
CD, so you might want to mirror the will in this section as long as you have it in the C area.
Yeah, just don't want it to be left out that we may do it or we may not. You know, I just, we will take this into consideration, and we will add it to our analysis instead of may. And I feel very strongly about that one, only because of the struggles we've had with portables. We've done better, I give you that, but we still have issues with that. And then when it comes to prioritization, 1A, you have in here that you're weighing the replacement value of each of the facilities, blah, 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 blah. I didn't see in here, and this could be, maybe I'm just being a little overly cautious, but I didn't see portables in there at all, as far as are portables included? So if a portable electricity went out, or the heat, or the air conditioning went out, or the heating went out, or whatever, there was a problem with that portable, would that then be included in this? Is that part of this prioritization, even if it's a portable classroom? Or does this only apply to building classrooms?
It doesn't preclude it, and it doesn't, to your point, specifically include it, but it's not excluded. So it's anything that can threaten instruction, which tend to be those 4 core areas.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'll leave that alone because that can get very complicated. And then lastly, again, on, I think you brought that up, Chris, I'm not sure, on 1D, where we have this examination will consider facility age, blah, blah, blah.
But then it conflicts.
So,
Here it uses 50 years, which is.
yeah, so we need to be
I think what you're
consistent.
talking about, go back to here. It says
Yeah, with the
40,
40
but
years.
here they're using 50. So I don't know, I forgot to ask about. Is that what you're asking?
The inconsistency of the 40 years and the 50 years.
I think it's that when you're talking about the age of the screening all facilities over 40 years, that's a screening process,
Right.
is how I read that. And then the FCI of greater of 0.6 will support a replacement recommendation if the facility is 50 years or older. So one is a recommendation process and one is a screening process, is my understanding. But Brandon, do you read that differently?
No, that's consistent.
So that's how we want to keep
So
that?
you took it
Is
between
that-
40 and 60, and you landed on 50?
Well, no, 50 years is our projected lifespan, but
Of
to
the
Ms.
building.
Blackman Taylor's point, yes, 40 years is when we start to see those inconsistencies, so it becomes a screening mechanism because it
Oh, I
usually
see,
doesn't,
okay.
usually doesn't point to the
I
whole
got you.
story.
Okay, and then we move up to the 50 because that's what we're making, actually making those changes.
Right.
Okay, I got you. Okay. I think that was all, and then my last question on the last page, where we're looking at this map of Bonanza. I'm Bonanza at Western. Does Western have any portables on their campus?
I would have to confirm that for you. They may, I don't want to mislead you, but.
So my question is then in this map, if there were portables, we're not seeing it on this map.
We do
When I
not-
worked at Western in 2017, they had portables.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, because if we're looking at maps to make decisions and we're not showing portables, then it kind of skews.
You're saying you would like an example
I would like to
that
be able to
actually shows portables on
as well, because that's
the
part of the
picture.
instructional facility.
I see what you're saying.
And then it does raise the issue, because now you're seeing, like, for example, some of the schools you named, where we see portable, it's like a portable park.
Well,
an
this
RV
is,
park.
but I
Right.
believe this example is just showing how an
Yeah, I
FCI,
get that. I get that.
comes
but
about.
we're weighing in portables, too.
not into the FCI,
It drives our capacity analysis, but not our FCIs.
because that's what we came up against when we were trying to have
Yeah.
this conversation about
Station before.
portables in the
Yeah,
past.
yeah.
Was that because portables are not permanent facilities, they don't fall under the FCI calculations, which is why we've looked to add portables as a part of the consideration
So, yeah,
elsewhere.
I got you. I
Because we
remember, yeah.
couldn't do it as a part of the FCI.
Where is there a way that we can show our portables still when we're looking
You
at?
tell me, Yvette, how do you want to capture it?
I mean, I would like to be able to see portables, because then wouldn't have to ask that question. I can look at a map and I can say, oh, we've got a portable park.
I venture to guess the FCI on nearly all of our portables would be 1, because they're pretty, I say relatively inexpensive, and to repair them is pretty extensive, and you know as much as
Yeah.
anybody, they are pretty old assets usually. We've bought a couple in the last couple of years, but by and large, it wouldn't really indicate anything different to us than what we currently already know.
I
But
think,
happy to capture however you want to see it.
I think for me, in terms of the sample of what's in an FCI, this is an adequate picture of that. I think what's more important is as we see reporting data based on this, that we continue to capture portables as information. So this isn't a sample of what sort of reporting we would be getting on these topics, in my opinion. This is just an illustration as a part of this regulation that gives an example of how FCI works in a very, very basic way. But to me, what reports and what oversight gets generated because of this policy is more valuable. I'm not sure how much we'll be referencing this to me, I see this as a sample page that might be on a quiz or something, but this is static information. These are not correct FCI numbers. This is just a sample.
Okay, well, in fairness, and then I'm done with my questions, but in fairness, I still would prefer to be able to see that on there, but with maybe a footnote or something, that those are portables, and we know that it's not part of the FCI, but I would prefer, that's just my opinion. Others have their own opinion, but I want to express mine.
I think an accommodation could be made, because this is just a sample, that you put an asterisk and say portables not included, or not pictured. Then that way it doesn't assume one way or another.
Our portables are included and that portables are included in the analysis.
Okay. And then, well, not yet. Do we have anybody online that would like to discuss this? Anybody else on the dais? I'd prefer, this is an action item, so I'd like to know if there's any public comment on this. Okay, I'm I'm hesitant because I know we're still at quorum even with Mr. Jones having stepped out, but I'd like to hesitate before actually making a motion on this.
Walk through it to see if I'm missing anything.
Just take an extra moment. I mean, I will, so just to be clear, in terms of these suggestions that were made today, Mr. McLaughlin, that your team could potentially consider some of this language in terms of updating it, or is there no intent to alter any of this language at this point because of where this process is? And this was more clarification.
I'll have to work with the superintendent's office on that. 'Cause,
I'm
yeah,
sorry?
I'll have to work on the superintendent's office on that because these are, again, staff recommendations on behalf of the superintendent. And these are good inputs to receive, but very much I'll have to see if it's consistent with what we as a district are recommending on, and
I
we're grateful
see.
for your guys' participation, but I don't want it to be misportrayed that you guys are representing the staff recommendation, though we hope it's all consistent.
So I think in terms of that, in our expectation as a bond oversight committee, I want to be clear that like we are able, oh, great, Mr. Jones, that we are able to make those concerns known, make those suggestions known, but we will be voting on whether or not to approve this language, sort of as is with consideration of those potential changes. If those changes do not get made, I think then my understanding is that your position at this point would be to not recommend if those changes are not,
That's a good question.
are absolutely integral to whether or not you
So
make
it's-
that
Just
recommendation.
for clarification, the superintendent's
Correct.
office staff have recommendations. It comes to us as an advisory board. We, in addition, can make recommendations, and then they choose, don't choose, change it completely. But
we
I,
could still
I
have
don't
our
think
recommendation.
it doesn't change anything. We're just clarifying language a little bit more closely, in my opinion.
Right, I'm just saying that this does not have to come back to us.
No.
To make another recommendation.
No.
Yes,
I-
Yvette.
I don't
Yes,
think so.
What I see before us is staff's recommendations, and we've entered into a conversation as to their recommendations to us that they're recommending. They can still make their own recommendations to the trustees as staff, the superintendent, but we as a committee can make our own recommendations. It could be that we totally agree 100% with everything just as written, and that could be our recommendation, that we support this document as presented to us, or we can make our recommendation with our changes. And so there could be, our recommendation could be made today, if we're ready to do that as a committee, with our recommendations, our changes. Our tweaks, yeah, thank you. And staff still could present, if they disagree, can still present their recommendations, but the committee is still making their recommendation. We're still a separate body from staff.
Oh, I understand that. This
Yeah.
is.
That's what I was just trying to clarify. So we can move forward today on this. We don't have to hold anything up or move anything forward. We can, if we all agree or disagree, or I think the committee.
If you're comfortable, I can try a motion, and then we see if
Yeah.
I get it or not.
Well, that's where I think it gets a little bit confusing, but we've already asked for public comment. We do not have public comment, so we are ready to entertain a motion. If, Chris, you want to get us started on this?
Okay, I'll make an effort. I would move that we approve the
Not
revision,
approve,
I recommend the revisions, additional revisions to Regulation 7112 with the following. On page 2, B2, Program Analysis, change the word may to will, so it matches with CD. The second part of the motion would include rewriting the paragraph program adequacy by deleting curriculum standards and inserting educational specifications. That on page 3 of 4, C, D, and I missed that, 2B, to insert the words "if any."
insert the words if any where?
After portable classrooms in D and in item C, B2, I'm misstating that. So those two should be if any after the words portable classrooms. And then I might just make a suggestion, that would be the changes that I saw that we discussed. They're fairly.
Okay,
they're
that
more-
was your motion.
That's my motion.
Okay.
And included in that motion is that staff, in their discussion with the superintendent's office, explore whether or not regional superintendents could gather program offerings so that they know by school what is being offered in a particular school, so that when somebody's, oh, well, they got that over there and they got that over there, that could complement what's going on. Because what I want to make sure is if we're recommending an upgrade to this, the school district is contemplating changing some from pre-K to 6 to pre-K 8. You have program changes that can shift some of what's included in here. I want to make sure that we are complementary to what's there rather than excluding anything potentially down the road.
Okay, that motion then got a lot more
Okay.
unwieldy,
Let me-
Chris.
Okay, so let me just do the initial motion, which is those 4 changes that I
Okay,
mentioned. And then
so-
we'll
I
come back.
second it.
Chris's motion, just to clarify, so everyone knows what's on the table, is to approve recommendation to the Board of School Trustees with the following suggestions, that in, just, I want to restate this, so in
B2.
procedure.
Recommendations.
B2,
Not
that
suggestion.
in the program analysis, the program analysis will consider facility age,
Correct.
percent of students enrolled versus program capacity, and portable classrooms, if any.
Correct.
Required to accommodate the current educational specifications. In the paragraph below that, to change curriculum standards to educational specifications. In C, paragraph 1D, that we add in, if any, to portable classrooms. Those are, those, yes, that is the 4 changes, the 4 tweaks recommended as a part of that.
Can I make a suggestion too?
So, Mr. Jones, you would like to amend
On E?
Chris's?
Instead of, staff staff and other community members may contact the regional superintendent. Shouldn't that be the trustee instead of the regional superintendent?
So you're suggesting perhaps maybe an and/or, the region superintendent and/or trustee?
I would say the trustee. That would be my suggestion.
I would rather add than replace. But Chris, do you accept that alteration?
Sure, you can do and/or trustee, and then that
Okay,
way.
in section E. So that is our 5 changes?
I think the trustee might want to weigh in on this.
I'd like to weigh in on that really
All right.
quickly. So this regulation is a district regulation, that's why it says staff. The trustees are, the 7 of us are elected, the other 4 are appointed. We are already public servants. So in my opinion, it doesn't need to be in a district policy. It's a given that our constituents can reach out anytime they want. I don't know that I would add that to a district policy.
All right, Mr. Jones,
Just a recommendation on my part.
how would you like to react to that?
Well, I was more because if you're talking about a regional superintendent, I figure by the time they
The
try to make
access
a
of that.
recommendation and getting access to them is quicker to get to the trustee than it would be to a regional
But you can do
superintendent.
that anyway.
Yeah, but we don't, so another thing to add to that is we only have 1 employee.
Right.
That employee is a superintendent. We don't have access to the regional as well, because that's not our employee. So we don't go to them and tell them what to do or ask them this or that. We go to the soup. So that is why the verbiage is in there like that.
And this is May, so I think, I have a comment from, remember that we are in the middle of a motion, so yes, can I have the comment from online, please? I don't know who it is. Nakia?
It was me, and I actually like the and/or option. I think if we are passing a motion, I'd rather have the option available now so that people kind of have the choice. So if the only employee is the superintendent, the trustees are able to access the superintendent more easily to have these discussions. So I would like to add the and or.
Thank you, Ms.
I
Jackson
support
Hill.
that.
Yes, reminder that we are in the middle of a motion. Yes. Okay.
But I just want to say this. The trustees are going to be, the bottom line, they're the ones that are going to approve this policy. If the trustees don't want that, they'll just make that amendment if you guys want to move forward with that, with that and or. My opinion is the trustees will get involved regardless on any issue. So I think if community has an issue, they're going to go to their trustee about this anyway. And the trustee will move forward with those discussions with the superintendent on it. And so I kind of agree with our trustee board president on that issue.
Sorry, let me think of my thought. Mr. Jones, would you like to still maintain this suggested alteration to the?
Well, the reason why I say the trustee, because most of the parents don't even know who the area superintendent is.
I
So
understand
that was the reason why I said the trustee. They know more about, they see more of a picture of a trustee at the
Right.
school than they're gonna see an area superintendent.
And I understand President Stevens is concerned as well as what is echoed by Yvette. But any of these tweaks are just a part of a recommendation that we are making to staff to change it. And again, this becomes not something that we are hoping, that is planned to come back to us. This is our feedback back to the employees. So I think,
I have a suggestion. I don't think we even need the first sentence.
I don't want to get even more into the weeds of this, so I'd like to try
But
and.
it's preclusive. Why do I have to have permission in a regulation that I want to complain that a school should be replaced and I'm only limited to go to the regional superintendent? That's what this says. So rather than create that, maybe you just start your sentence with the CIP working group will review the draft replacement program. If a parent or a family member or a guardian or a kid doesn't think that the CIP replacement is happening to their school, why are we putting it in a regulation which limits who they can talk to? So maybe we just take that sentence out and then just leave it with the CIP, because it doesn't presume whether it's a complaint or a non-complaint if you take that sentence out. Does that make sense, Brandon, or not?
I think the idea of having it there was that it actually gave a permission structure for parents and community members to get involved, because it is not assumed in this process that they have a voice in that as an option.
Then to me, I have every right to go to my trustee and complain about any damn thing I want to. If they respond to me, fine. If not, then I'm going to take them out next time. So, it's kind of like, why are we precluding? Only if you're complaining about the replacement do you get to go to the superintendent, regional superintendent. That, to me, begs the question. What is that
And
trying
I think
to
it's
address?
that matter of permission. Like
Yeah,
you're giving.
you don't need permission.
No, you don't need permission, but I think we're in a situation where people don't necessarily assume that that is an option that they have.
And that's why I said and or superintendent, so that people know their options.
Instead of trustee.
Specifically.
Say
Instead of
regional superintendent
trustee?
and
Oh,
or
sorry,
superintendent.
the regional and trustee and or, so that they know their options. They can go to both, they can go to one.
So let's get, because I think we are getting really far into the weeds. I want to make sure, Chris, what is your motion right now? Is it still those tweaks, or you want to remove that sentence
I'm
entirely?
going to suggest that we do the motion with my tweaks, with the 4 tweaks, then we come back and deal with Walter's question so that we actually don't muddy the waters any further. Let's maybe deal with this motion first,
Okay, so at this point, you are,
the 4 tweaks.
as your motion, you are rejecting Mr. Jones's adjustment. And no, for this motion, you are rejecting his
He didn't have a
requested.
second, so there's nothing to reject at this point. Oh, Yeah, you'd seconded mine, so you.
No, I was asking if you were willing to amend your motion.
right now,
You
no.
are not willing to amend your motion. So the original motion that Chris has stands. Yvette, you are still seconding that emotion? Okay, so all in favor of making this recommendation to the Board of School Trustees with the 4 tweaks that we've already clarified, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Now we go to one.
Thank you. So now we will continue just our conversation with a 7112 and consider an additional conversation regarding the prioritization of needs. And I'm not sure that we actually need to make a motion on this as much as we consider it as a part of the conversation where we speak to staff and say that we think that there can be room in this language to make it more, one, to consider whether or not it is dictating a policy to the community and removing rights that they would have otherwise. And if it's not, if considered more of a suggestion, that we consider expanding the language to whom they can make a request.
I have a question to our liaison. Madam President, would it make sense, would you reference just in the discussion to the other trustees that some discussion centered around letter E, and that we suggested that they may contact their regional superintendent, the superintendent, or their trustee, and then blah, 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 and at least reference that for discussion versus us doing a motion at this point?
So what I'm going to
Sorry.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your recommendation, what you vote on as a committee, to the board. So whatever you guys vote on as your recommendation, that's what we'll discuss. I did make some notes, like, for example, I did put note, I even put Chris G next to it because it was a decent point, and it makes me think, like, how many regulations do we have where we specifically say community, parents, guardians, like, if that's not a consistent theme,
Exactly.
maybe it doesn't belong, but that's a good discussion point. So, like, I am taking notes, I am listening, but at the end of the day, the main point will be whatever you vote on as a committee
take them,
as the recommendation.
Okay.
I can't, what I don't want to do is get into individual discussion points with the board, because that's not. That's not your role. Yeah, you got it.
So I think
So
to
it's up-
that end, there is potentially room to make a motion that if we agree as a body that we would like to expand the language of step 3, section 1, subsection E, to be, that we're not dictating the language of that, but that we are urging greater consideration of that clause. I think that is where we might have room to continue making a recommendation. I have somebody online. Is that Jessica?
Yeah, it's me. I guess I just don't understand why we're hemming and hawing over all this verbiage. Because it's not like a lot of the verbiage that we've been looking at is majorly impactful. I feel like we're wasting a lot of time on this. And I don't know, I'm just really confused. So maybe there's people out there in the community who are watching this who will be equally confused about why this even matters. Not to be rude, I appreciate everybody who's putting in suggestions and things. I just don't understand why we're spending so much time on mays and wills and all this other stuff, when in reality, I don't know, I feel like maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing right now.
I understand your point, Ms. Ellen, and I thank you for bringing it up. I think for me, and this is my perspective, and maybe this will help, is that when we come to the language of policy and regulation, one, that is one of the major areas of purview for the Bond Oversight Committee. So in terms of examining the process of how things get decided becomes important if this language is what dictates how staff and how staff works with the community, with the Bond Oversight Committee, and with the Board of School Trustees in making these decisions. So as an example, just to go back several years, there was no mention of portables in any of this language. And so portables were routinely not a part of the consideration process, or not a dictated form of the decision-making process. So they may have informally considered how many portables were on a campus, how they were used, whether or not that was a factor in deciding whether or not to renovate or replace a school. By adding in this language, we wanted to create a mechanism by which a temporary facility had an impact on decision-making when it came to replacements or renovations. So without that language in the policy or the regulation that dictated the work of staff, then, or at least looked to try and create a requirement in that area, it wouldn't guarantee that that was a part of the consideration. So I think that's where some of this language stuff, and I understand and I hear that idea of being in the weeds, because I can feel, how complicated it can be to sort of group decide on individual words and language. I think the concern is that without having this in that regulation or the policy is what happens if we don't have that mechanism. So I think while I understand that the tediousness of some of this language specification, I think ultimately the import is, if we don't have regulations that comport to actions that we want taken, and it becomes custom, as we will see with 7121, to sort of just grant waivers or ignore those regulations or policies, then we get into a position where the work that we're doing is not as effective as it could be. And it's ideally, this is a policy from 2001. Ideally, this is a policy that outlives all of our time on the Bond Oversight Committee and gives a framework by which future members of this committee can bring up concerns about replacements. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. And I totally understand why we want to talk about portables and add that into the regulations and things. I feel like you said, like maybe we're digging a little too deep for like what we should be accomplishing today. I don't know. I just feel like we've spent so much time on something that I know that people in the administrative office have worked really hard on. And I know that everybody has good intentions. I don't know, maybe help. I feel like we're spending too much time on it.
I appreciate that feedback, Ms. Allen, and I am ready to move on, but we're going to, yes, Yvette?
I just want to add one of the reasons why this regulation, both these regulations are so important to me. When I got on the Bond Oversight Committee, I guess it's been, 7, 8 years, it's been a while. When we looked at repairs of facilities, replacements, some schools were getting repairs while other schools were getting replacements. There was a lot of inequity. And because we weren't addressing the issue of portables, I will talk about Matt Kelly, for example. Matt Kelly Elementary School had a ton of portables. Some worked, some didn't. And this is what I think really, put a fire under my hat, was seeing some of the inequities, especially with a lot of our older schools who had a ton of portables. Like I said earlier, like I said to staff, really appreciate the work they've done we've gotten rid of a ton of portables where they've been reassigned, put it like that, because our newer areas that are booming, where we're overstaffed, we're having to use those because we're overstaffed. But a lot of them were being used in the older schools, and they were just there year after year after year after year. And so that's why we pushed so hard in this work to try to deal with these portables and make sure that the portables had weight when staff was considering what they were going to do with these sites going forward.
Thank
I
you.
hope that helps clarify at least my intention.
I understand, and I would like to move forward on this because we do have other things we have to get through.
This is Chris. I'm going to make a suggestion, and I appreciate Walter bringing it up, because words do matter, and with no disrespect, regulations have the weight of being basically a law to implement stuff. So that does make intent very important. So whether we spend time, and I get what you were saying, Jessica, to the layperson, it's going to be like, why are we debating this stuff? It's all in how you interpret it. And if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So if you as a parent want to argue about X, Y, and Z, and if it's not in regulation, you can be blown off just because, well, it doesn't address it in the reg. So let's come back to what Walter's saying. Maybe we just say, we voted, we made our recommendations on language change. As you present that to the superintendent's office, would you at least have them take a look at, as our liaison's going to, in letter E, removing the first sentence, or adding and/or trustee to that, and/or, because at this point, the way it reads, if you're going to request a replacement consideration, it doesn't meet the requirements of this regulation, then the only person as a community person that you can allegedly report to is the regional superintendent. Nobody knows who the heck that is, as a general rule. So it just seems preclusive. Or 3, just get rid of letter E, and you don't deal with it at all. So those, I would just say that we just make a suggestion that staff present those 3 possibilities for them to consider as they review our tweaks.
So to that end,
So no motion is necessary.
well, it would be because we are deciding as a body whether or not to make this recommendation. Because that is to President Stevens' point, which is that an individual, we need to make that recommendation as a voting
You could
body.
just say, without objection to the board, would you consider having this language be discussed by staff? You don't have to do it as a formal motion.
Otherwise, I don't believe that it bears the weight of the full committee. It becomes what we need to understand, that the majority accepts that proposal.
Well, then see if they accept the idea.
Okay. So Chris has made a motion that,
I'm only making a suggestion that staff, when they present our changes, explain that we had this discussion with some potential changes.
okay, I think
And if the board doesn't object. And you don't have to do it by motion. Whatever you want, Walter.
Well, yeah, I would make a motion because it was the same thing that Ms. Williams went over with when she said some schools don't have adequate what other schools have. And that's basically what it falls back on when it's saying you have to go talk to certain ones to get it done.
I understand, but
So
here.
I'll make a motion if we can change the language.
But here's my issue, is that we had a motion on this recommendation. And when Chris made that motion, we chose not to include that as a part of the recommendation.
Gina,
I
if
just was going to
if I
take it up
can.
as a
Okay.
secondary.
I hear what you're saying. I don't want you guys to commit an open meeting law, so I'm going to say you're outside of the agendas of this. I hear what you're saying, and I am more than happy to say a lot of words when I present this next week.
Okay, I think we need to move on at this point. So we are moving on from, we've made a motion, we have approved that motion. We are moving on from 2.07. We are now moving to, 2.06. Moving to 2.07, this is Regulation 7121 review. I do want to give an update before we start this conversation, because one of the things that we noticed when we talked about this last month was how woefully out of date some of this information was, to the point where at one point I had even made the suggestion that we could possibly not use this regulation. When, as an executive committee, we met and discussed the actual language about this, it became very clear very, very quickly that between the executive committee, that we were not in a position to make this sort of, as we've seen from 7112, that it is very challenging to make granular level recommendations on this as a large committee. So when we consulted with Brandon on our options for what to do, one of our options became, and this is why it is an action item, where we can make a recommendation to the Board of School Trustees that they request the superintendent to review this regulation with staff and direct them to be able to make the changes that will then be brought forward to us the way in which 7112 would happen. So what we are discussing today is whether or not we want to make not the specifics of this, whether we are making a recommendation to the Board of School Trustees to ask the superintendent to pursue the changes to this regulation. Given and keeping in mind that last month when we talked about this, we have found that this policy has routinely resulted in waivers and has since, in practice, has been so outdated that it is not effective in its current state. So that is the conversation that we are talking about right now. So I will open it up to discussion. I'm sorry. Yes?
I'm not quite sure I'm understanding what are you asking of us? So you're going to present to us 7121, and this is to make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that they instruct staff or
No, and the
the superintendent to have staff review 7121 and make some kind of recommendation about new policy around, or revise this policy to present to the Bond Oversight Committee. So we would then be getting that recommendation from staff to us, Bond Oversight Committee. We would look at it, and then our recommendation would then go to the Board of Trustees.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
I got you.
Because when we talked about this last month and we looked to try and get facilities direct input on that, that became the process by which
Gotcha.
we
I
had to
wasn't
do
here
it.
last month, so I just
Nope,
wanted to make
that
sure
is totally
I
fine.
knew
So
what I was being charged with
what
today.
we are being
Thank
charged
you.
with is whether or not we are going to make a recommendation to the Board of School Trustees for them to request of the superintendent to ask facilities to review this policy, this regulation, excuse me. Yes, Chris?
I guess because you're right, when we discussed with myself and Al, we were like, we don't even know what this is. So staff has not made any changes to this. Why
That
are
is
we
correct.
Why are we reviewing it then?
We are not. We need to be
on our
able
ag-
to,
it's
it is
on
on
our
our agenda to move this to Board of School Trustees, because without that, we are not in a position to request staff to make the changes themselves.
Okay. And so staff will take into consideration the new Senwa non-functional grass, the use of the term turf, all those other components that are there. Discuss it and bring it back, because over parking, we talked about at one of the meetings. And if there's need for the municipal governments to give you some waivers that come in on parking, those types of things.
Right.
So they'll flush it out if the trustees refer, or the superintendent refers it back to staff, and then this will come back to us.
Correct.
Correct.
And staff is also, they have the ability to involve how they want bond oversight in the creation of that policy. Is that more clear? Okay. Do we have any other discussion when it comes to online? Are we still at quorum? Correct.
All right, I'd like to make, if there's no further discussion, I'll make
Is there any, there's no further discussion, but let's ask for public comment, please. Is there, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that the Bond Oversight Committee is making a recommendation to the Board of Trustees to instruct the superintendent to have staff review policy.
Regulation.
Regulation 7121 for revision and brought back to the Bond Oversight Committee for our recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Flatt. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, let the record show that Mr. Jones had stepped out for that particular vote, please. Thank you. All right, that closes 2.06. We are going to move on to 2.07, future agenda items that we have not already discussed or talked about. Do we have any items that we would like to discuss or propose? All right, then we will move on. Do we have any, well, we have no motion, but do we have any public comment on 2.07? Okay, thank you. We are going to move on to Number 3.01, this is the public comment period. So a member wishing the public on matters that were not a part of the agenda. Valerie, do we have any public comment in this section? All right, we will move on to 4.01, adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn from Chris G. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Flatt. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none. Can we also make a note that Mr. Jones was not present for the adjournment vote? Thank you very much. That concludes this meeting of the Bond Oversight Committee, meeting at 1:15 p.m. Thank you.